Welcome back to another session. I hope you were well. In today's session, and as we start a new week, let me let me announce today's topic. It's important for me to stress and state that I am still building on the theme that I began a week ago, which was titled "Relationships That Men Should Avoid." In today's session, and the topic for today is women who want to change you. Now, let's put it to the side and let me do what I have done in each session by prefacing the conversation. I am not speaking about dating. I think that's a very important statement to make. Dating and relationships are not synonymous when it comes to intersexual dynamics. Dating has to do with short term, purely from a man's perspective. Dating is something men do in order to achieve what they truly want, which is to have sex and which is to ejaculate. Relationships, on the other hand, is what, all things remaining equal, for those who are serious, what dating should progress into. I use marriage as my gold standard. I am speaking about relationships and therefore marriage, not dating. Men, generally speaking, you can date whoever you want. I put a caveat, which is you date with a timeline. Otherwise, what was supposed to be a short-term experience and fun morphs into a long-term relationship, which it was never designed to be, and which is destined to fail. So over the past week plus, I have been talking about relationships men should avoid purely from the perspective of a man and based on the outcome that a man who wants to be successful should be aspiring to get to. I make a distinction. I'm not speaking to all men. All men, this advice does not apply. As a matter of fact, I make it very clear that in the UK and in the West, about 80% of men are generally raised to be feminine men. They're raised on a feminine software. Only about 20% of men are therefore more assertive, confident, aware of their purpose and what they want. But I am speaking to only between those in the 5 to 10% of all men, which would mean those who want to be the best amongst the rest. Now, why have I chosen the topic women who want to change you? Now, I have seen over my life, but also today's session particularly was inspired because I, over the weekend, was having a conversation with my best friend, and we were talking about someone we both love very much, and the issues ensuing in a person's relationship. And during the conversation, I asked the question because to set the theme, two people dating, separated, and there's been changes being made by the man, I guess, to try and become the man that he should have been. And I said, well, I support the outcome. I support the goal of wanting to be a better person. You recognizing that there were flaws in you. However, I do not agree with the motivation or the desire behind the goal. The motivation and desire should be for you to become your best self and for you to come into your manhood and to understand and wear the masculine frame, to pick up the burden of performance a man is supposed to have and the responsibility that comes with such burden of performance. What I do not subscribe to is you trying to change yourself because she wanted you to change and you refused at the time, and now the relationship is over. You were trying to change so that when she sees the version 2.0 of you, she's more accepting of you. I said, one of the issues with that, which I will address in today's session, is you're being groomed to constantly seek affirmation validation, and approval. Whether that's been done from a man's perspective or from a woman's perspective, I think it is wrong. If you want to do something, do it for yourself. Man up, grow up, become the person you should be for yourself, not for another. Now, with regards to the topic today about women who want to change you, one of the issues, and I'll start today's session as follows. Compromise is something that we use a lot. The word we use a lot in relationships. We often say, well, if you meet someone who you love and you care about, you would want to compromise for them. You see, men who are in the top 5 to 10%, or who want to be in the top 5 to 10%, only compromise for their purpose. Let me say that again. Competitive, successful, driven, ambitious, goal-setting men who understand who they are and who've accepted the responsibility of manhood only compromise for their purpose. Now, least you think I'm saying that you should be unaccommodating. That is not what I am suggesting. Your purpose is your main focus. And that would simply mean that you live a lifestyle of compromise in submission to your purpose. You do not live a lifestyle of compromise in union with another. As a matter of fact, if you have to compromise always in a relationship, that is a sign that it is the wrong relationship for you. Compromise should not be a lifestyle. Now, you can compromise in a season. You can make changes at the right and at the appropriate time, but you cannot live a lifestyle or a life, and you cannot lead a life of compromise. The one thing we were promised is change. As human beings, change. Now, here's the part of the issue with compromise and the need for you to continuously keep changing yourself is you're always placing your identity in something outside of yourself, based on an image given to you by another. And because change is constant, whenever there is a change, it means the outcome will be modified or changed, and therefore you have a crisis of identity. So as a man, the only thing you stay compromising about is your purpose, because that is where a sense of self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-belief, self-assurance originates from. Women who want to change you are the wrong women for you for relationships. Now, they might be perfectly, they might be the perfect relationships, or they might be the perfect women to date, because you're dating them for, and with a timeline in mind, and for the short term, to have fun, to enjoy yourself, and for both of you to have a good time. So you can be together with each other for no more than 6 months, and in that period, despite her saying he's a great guy, but he's a bit of a bad boy, there isn't enough emotional investment that would necessitate her wanting to change you in such a short time frame. Men, avoid relationship with women who want to change you. I make a distinction between people who want to change you and people who wish and will for your best and most authentic personal development. Very different. Obviously, as friends and as loved ones, we want each other to do well. Personal development, growing, constant and never-ending improvement and growth should be almost at the cornerstone of your manhood. However, that should come from within. That should come from self. Now, people might inspire you or motivate you to change, but the direction of change should not come from the woman. Now, it should not also come from a friend of yours that is male. There's nothing wrong with seeing someone and being inspired by another person who you look up to. There's nothing wrong with taking that inspiration and making changes in your life so that you can have more, be more, and do more. There is something wrong where there is an external stimuli constantly telling you that there is something incomplete about you. Now, one of the reasons for that is that if you fall into the position where you're trusting that third voice or that second voice, whilst the advice might be good, it also means that the same power that person has over you can be used to your detriment. I'll put it to you in a different way. A friend, a loved one, is someone who loves you just the way you are. A mentor, a coach, is someone who likes you too much to leave you the way you are. I never have an issue with someone you've paid as a mentor or coach who tells you very direct advice as to what you need to get you from point A to point B. I have an issue with when there are emotions involved from women in your life, lovers, who are trying to tell you what you should do to go from point A to point B. What that simply does is it immediately moves you away from the position of responsibility and puts you in a position of followership. It puts her in the position of leadership. It should be your purpose, your vision, your pursuits, your adventure. A woman who therefore corrects you and tells you what you can do to make yourself better and how you can go from where you are to where you should be going to is in the wrong position. She's in the wrong place. Automatically, it's an indication that you are, as a man, in the wrong space and in the wrong place. Most importantly, you are in the wrong frame. Now, generally speaking, what you tend to find is this begins very in a subtle way. You see, a chain of habit can be too light to be felt until they become too heavy to be broken. It starts off with a small nag, and it becomes repetitive. Then it becomes a complaint. Then it becomes an objection to things you do, until, using the tactics of wearing you down, you break down and you change. Most men who go into midlife crisis, and if you understand that I am speaking to men and I am targeting men who are 35 and over, because that is the age when I start to encourage men to consider relationships seriously. It simply means that a woman who comes into your life, if you are 35 and over, she's playing the role of mother and you're playing the role of son. That is a wrong relationship dynamics to be in. My recommendation to you is to run, because you will always be looking up to mother for guidance and advice, whereas you should be the one in control and the one responsible for that relationship and union. You as the man are supposed to be the foundation. To look to a woman for direction is wrong. The only time this usually comes is where you meet women who are headstrong, like the women I said you should avoid in the previous sessions, women who are 35 and over, women who are older than you, women who perhaps have pre-formed families, and more. Avoid relationships where compromise is on the table from day one. It's no different from you meet someone and you go out on a date and she says, number one, I don't date and I do not go into relationships, and I will not marry a man who smokes. Now, I respect that position from a woman who knows what she wants. I do not respect a man who compromises. You see, it begins with a complaint, a nag, and then it becomes an ultimatum. She initially tolerates you, overlooks your imperfections, sex happens, the relationship at the early stage begins, some form of intimacy is there, and then she says, well, here's the ultimatum. If you want to be with me, stop smoking, or you can't be with me. Whenever a woman issues an ultimatum, as a man, walk away. Men who accept ultimatums will always be beta males and will always be second in the relationship and will always be relegated as good boys. There's women who pat you on the head And when they discuss with their friends, they talk about the compromises you made and they say how sweet you are, but there will never be admiration, there will never be honor or respect. Because what she's done is she's pulled you to the lowest common denominator and she's tested your resolve and your willingness to say, here are my boundaries. And she's actually broken your boundaries. She cannot respect you. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that ultimatums issued by women based on a requirement for you to change should be, I think it should be treated in the same way, and to put it I'm not going to put it mildly, it should be treated in the same way that the United States or the United Kingdom does not negotiate with terrorists. It's completely off the table. And here is what I would say in return. And I make the same position about ultimatums and compromise going the other way from men to women. So I don't want you to think this is a sexist or one-sided double standard. No, it applies both ways. When people meet you, they either accept you as you are, they either accept the vision you have and the path you're traveling in, they either accept the bumpy roads that come with the journey, or they have a choice. They can exercise the option on day one not to join, not to get involved, not to get intimate with you, not to start the relationship. What I completely disagree with is people who meet you the way you are. They initially accept you the way you are. And then they go into almost an evangelic missionary mission of trying to change you from who you are to who they think that you should be. Some of these people go as far as telling you how much potential you have as a man and how you would be great if only you made some changes. She's trying to mother you. I think you should walk away if you are a man who knows his worth and who has some value. Women who do this, they may love you. They might even like you. They do not admire you. It effectively is an indication that she does not admire you. She does not honor you. And she definitely does not respect you. You see, a woman who admires, honors, and respects a man, and most importantly, accepts a man, is at peace with the man, with all of his brokenness. Now, one of the reasons I say avoid such women is, some sessions ago, I produced a video where I explain the needs of a man. Let me summarize. There are needs that we have as men that we are born with. There are certain needs that we acquire, we develop a taste for them. And there are certain needs that are seasonal. So some needs are innate, that come with biology. Some other needs we cultivate, we develop an appetite, a taste for them. And then some other needs come in seasons. The wise woman understands which need is which and is able to separate the majority of the needs that come as part of his biological package and the minority of his needs that may be seasonal. A woman who therefore chooses to place the relationship, or rather the future of the relationship, on the basis of a seasonal need that you may have at that particular time is indicating that she's not wise. And if you want to be successful as a man, you want to be in a relationship with a woman who is discerning and who is wise. And it doesn't matter how attractive she may be, she's indicated to you that she's not discerning, she's not of good judgment, and she lacks wisdom. Because women who are wise do not place ultimatums or do not try to change a man when 70% or more of who he is at the core is sufficient. If I scored 70 on a test score, I would make a distinction. Anything I get else, anything extra I get above 70 is a bonus. There are certain women who choose the 5% and go to war over 5%, neglecting the 80% that is perfect. You see, whatever you focus on tends to expand. There are women who see you in all of your glory as a man and are attracted to you initially. But the moment there is some interaction, introduction, conversation, intimacy, sex, they hone in and they zero in on your flaws. That those flaws might be 2% or 3%. As a man, you do not compromise. You do not compromise for women. You compromise for your purpose. And you have to keep in mind, a woman who mothers you will always be superior to you from a balance of power basis, but most importantly, it will also mean that you will always be conditioned to seek approval for the rest of the relationship that both of you are together. Walk away. Don't be carried away with, and here is the key part of what I should say, her intent might be good. Her message might be right. What she has in mind to change you into might be even necessary. But it's not her place. That's the key word. She is out of place. She is out of place. And interestingly, here's the key part to keep in mind. If you do what I suggest, which is to age gap date, and let's assume you go for the sweet spot, 7.5 years, between 5 and 10 years, at 35, you would be dating a woman who's 27 and a half, give or take 27. A woman who's 27, and here's the key thing to keep in mind. Let's assume that we all have 100 experiences every day, and all experiences are equal. If you're 7.5 years older than she is, for the sake of this exercise, I've rounded up to 8 years older than she is, it would mean every year you have, based on just your chronological age, you have 100 more experiences per day across 350 days. I exclude the remaining, allow for holidays and other things. You say 350, not 365. 350 times 100 is 35,000 experiences. 35,000 experiences across 8 years will bring you to roughly about 31 or 32, will bring you up to about 320 to 330 approximately, give or take a few units, 1,000 experiences more. A person who has 330,000 more experiences than another, seldom, especially if you consider all experiences to be equal, and we hold all other things remaining equal, the less experienced person cannot be advising the more experienced person on what to do. It's just not possible. Based on the law of averages, and most importantly, the law of large numbers. A woman, therefore, who is 27, telling you what to do and how to change, indicates something that I think is very important. She's relegated you to the feminine role. In her view, she sees you as incomplete. But it also means that you're not equally yoked at the time. But what it also means is that your manhood value and your character value is low. You might be attractive as a man. You might have a high sexual marketplace value as a man. You may even have a high economic intrinsic value as a man. You may have a high gentleman's value as a man. Your non-sexual marketplace value could also be high. Your reproductive fertility value could be high. But what it indicates is that your manhood value and your character value, both of which make up about 70% of your overall value as a man, is too low. The indication and implication is that you should be working harder on yourself than you are on the relationship. You should go back to the drawing board. You're not fully cooked as a man, and you should not be in a relationship at that point, because it indicates there's something missing. She's simply observed based on what she's witnessed around you, and she's effectively stated what she will not tolerate or accept. You never accept ultimatums, even when the ultimatums and when the intention or otherwise could actually be to your benefit. Let me say that again. I often say when I teach, don't accept what I say. Don't reject what you hear me say. But if you can, don't neglect what I'm sharing with you. Gather the information, go away, process the information, but ask yourself one simple question. Can this information help me achieve my goal? Can this information get me from point A to point B? If the answer is yes, apply the information, irrespective of what you think about me. Close your eyes and listen to the resident speak. The formula works. H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. It doesn't matter whether you mix the composition of the compounds in a dark basement or in a penthouse suite. There's a law built into success. If you apply the formula, success is yours to keep. In the same way, a woman who wants to change you, she might want to change you in a manner that makes you a better man. I'm not arguing that. You might have flaws and bad habits that need eradicating or removing. I'm not disputing that. She may have seen the mistakes you're making, and maybe from her lived experience, might think that perhaps from a comparative perspective, you were just like someone she loves, her father, her uncle, who threw away his life because he had a bad vice. Acceptable, perfectly acceptable. All of the outcomes could be pointing towards success. I'm not disputing that. What I'm disputing is you relegating responsibility in making yourself who you should be, which is partly why I recommend between 18 years and 35, you focus on your purpose, your vision, financial success, your career, your profession, failing, developing a network of men around you who can hold you accountable and to whom you're useful to and to whom you're accountable to, so that you are successful at 35. But also, more importantly, so that you have the right foundation at 35 to continue to build the life you want to lead. I have an issue with men who attempt to transform themselves based on what a woman said, a woman who they've only been dating for 6 months, or who they've only met for 2 days, or for a week. They throw away a core foundation of what they believed in because they become pussy whipped. They become pea whipped. I have an issue with that. The advice might be great, but it's coming from the wrong person and at the wrong time. The only exception to this is, and here perhaps it's important to note an exception. If she's your wife, she's earned the right, and she's earned the trust that comes with being your advisor. Let me say that again. If she's your helpmeet, she's your wife, then she has earned, and prior to earning, she had gained your trust in providing good advice to you. When you solicit such advice, keyword, when you solicit such advice. You see, if you ignore everything I've said, at some point in the future, you pay a price. And the way this happens is I've seen it across so many young men. You change, but you change for her. And you change at a time when your value, manhood value, sexual marketplace value, economic and intrinsic value primarily, and all the other values is very low. And as you start to come into your man space and you start to develop into a man, you come to find out what you really like and who you really are. Maybe you discover your purpose. And then you move in the direction of that purpose. But she's already given you a vision. And what you find is that, two cannot walk together except they agree on the vision. You have been walking in this direction because that was what she gave you. You lacked a vision and a purpose. And suddenly you've come to your place. You've got to the Garden of Gethsemane and you've seen the vision. As the great person once said, I've seen my future and I've decided to live there. I have seen my future and I have decided to live there. And so you have this contention between what your spirit is calling you to do and what the woman you love is asking you to do. And what tends to happen is a conflict within yourself and a conflict between both of you. It ends badly, as I've observed, usually a divorce, because both of you grow out of the relationship, which is partly why I encourage young women to choose men firstly based on their character value and their manhood value, rather than any of the other values. Because a man who understands his purpose and has come into his place as a man will not accept a woman with a vision. He puts in on the table his vision and says to her, this is where I am going. This is the plan. He doesn't invite her to join. She always asks, can I join? A man, therefore, who is with a woman who is trying to change him is invariably playing the reverse role and asking her, can I join your vision as the woman? Because he lacks purpose and a vision. Avoid such relationships if you are a man and if you want to be in the top 5 to 10% of men who are successful. Now, what this also means is that as men, the burden of performance is always on you, which is partly why the need to be around other men who are more successful, who failed much more than you have, but also who can be very honest with you and who can say to you, son, her advice is correct. Her recommendations are on point. Her hope is in good faith, but she is out of place. She is out of place. And you, son, you, brother, you are out of place. And the first thing you have to do as a man is get in place. Now think about this as I close today's session. You get into a buffet, and you want to have a meal. And you see there is a queue. The queue is flowing. What is the first thing you have to do in order to get to the point where you actually are satisfied and are full? The first step is to get in line. The second step is to stay in line. If you get in line and you stay in line, you will get to the front of the queue at some point. Men, therefore, who are out of place, the first thing you have to do is get back in line. Not what she's giving you as a line, but get back in line based on your masculinity, based on your manhood. And if you lack a sense of purpose and vision, this is where I recommend about between 5 and 10% of what you earn should be invested in mentors and coaches, people who can guide you, but people who are not emotionally connected to you, who are disassociated from you, and therefore who can be direct, honest. And usually my recommendation is people who are financially independent, because people who are dependent on your coaching fees, in order to keep the money coming, will often tell you a lie, because they are dependent on the source of income. Whereas if you were to go to someone who is independent, financially secure, but cares about you, they can say, listen, son, you're wasting my time. That's where I think you're making a mistake. They never give you a purpose and they never give you a vision. They help you, they help through the process of curiosity and questioning, allow you to get into a place where you can self-reflect and introspect on what areas of your life need improvement, but most importantly, what that purpose and vision and goal could be if you knew what it was. So they help you dream and they guide you towards that pathway, and they give you options. They teach you how to think about options and help you identify cost benefit analysis for each and tell you the consequence and the trade-offs you're making for each. Women who try to change you always have an upper hand over the long term. And as a man, if you accept ultimatums and if you start to compromise, and if compromise becomes a lifestyle, the costs associated with such a decision, the consequences associated with such a decision, the constraints that will come with said decision, and the trade-offs that you have to make might be so great that in many ways you lose a sense of who you are on that journey towards making yourself into what she wants you to be. I close with this. If you change into what she wants you to be, she will always resent the fact that she could manipulate, control, and change you. Women have an intrinsic respect and admiration for men who they cannot manipulate, men who they cannot control. Women will use their value in the marketplace and what they were inherently given: youth, beauty, seduction, chastity, purity, attractiveness, to get men to change. And if you look through time, if you look all the books of antiquities and stories, what you tend to find is whenever a man compromised from his true nature, it always ended very badly. Let me say that again. When men compromise and move away by following a woman's recommendation and move away from their purpose and their plan, it always ends very badly. And women who do so always use subtle gestures, their beauty, their love, their intimacy, their affection, their presence, as leverage, sometimes even sex, as leverage to get men to change. In every instance, there's always regret, because when the men change, what they effectively do is to sell out on their true self. Now, I hope today's session has been of some value to you.